and numeracy skills. They want them to attend these schools because they want them to have the foundation that they can use to then progress to junior secondary schooling or senior secondary schooling. Um, and they also want them to acquire these numeracy and literacy skills in order to facilitate other pursuits. So if
Mm,
children wanted to do other things or engage in other activities or pursue, say, informal apprenticeships, parents believe that these literacy and numeracy skills were critical in enabling children to be able to actually make use of those skills and to actualize those skills. So they were, I would say, quite favorable and interested in formal schooling, but so the nature of the public schooling and the nature of the opportunities that parents perceive from formal schooling, I think
mm.
challenged their ability to actually, if you will, act on those interests. So beyond secondary schooling, you have parents who had children who had pursued tertiary schooling but haven't been able to get jobs. And there were numerous examples of these kinds of students within the community. So you had a lot of parents who felt instead of supporting my child to continue into tertiary schooling where they will come out and not be employed, why don't I enroll them in informal apprenticeships? So you have
Mm.
a dynamic where there's all sorts of learning forms, as I call them, occurring within this community. So you've got the Islamic schooling where children typically enroll in um, at the primary school level. And for those who want to proceed, they might continue at the junior and senior secondary level as well. You've got the formal schooling, and then you've got these informal apprenticeships that some parents enroll their children in order to expand the opportunities that they want those children to have. And then you've got different after school activities and the kinds of economic activities that children undertake in order to support their households. So that it was just a plethora of activities and dynamics within the community in relation to learning.
It sounds like really important work. I mean, how have you been? Because you went there, didn't you? You've been over, but obviously the pandemic's now hit. How are you sort of keeping in touch and trying to proceed with your PhD in the field at the moment?
Yeah, so I was quite lucky. The last time I went was in November 2019, and that was just a couple of months, excuse me, prior to the pandemic and the lockdown. So that November 2019 visit was my follow-up visit, which was
Okay.
my sort of my last data generation visit. So I haven't needed to return to generate data, but I have been keeping in touch. From my last visit on the radio show, the purpose of which was to try to generate funds for a fundraising campaign that I was running at the time, we were able to, during that November 2019 visit, we were able to complete the installation of one borehole. But since that time, last year in December 2020, I've been able to maintain the connection with the other community. And I did another fundraising process where we were able to install the borehole in that other community. So there has been a connection that has been maintained with the two communities via
Is
the
that?
schools.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say it sounds like you're winning their hearts and minds, Bukola, doing what you're doing.
Well, it was a way of trying to give back. I mean, I think I write about this in my work that I think when we do research in disadvantaged contexts, where when you go to these contexts and they're just needs that abound, it just for me felt unfair to leave and not try to within the capacity that I had to try to
Mm.
address even one need, if you know what I mean. And I felt that that purpose transcended my PhD project with its resource and time constraints, but I felt within my capacity that there was something that I could do that could make a difference. And I think I was ultimately quite happy with the decision about the water because again, because of COVID and sort of need
Yeah.
for sanitation,
Mm.
it's proven quite important for those communities.
So when does your PhD finish? How much more work have you got left?
At the moment, I think I've probably got another 4 or 5 months to
Right. Wow.
submit, and then then there's the Viva process afterwards. So I'm quite near the end, happily.
That's a lot. How long have you been doing it now?
About 3 years and a few months. Yeah.
Right. So
Mhm.
pretty intense. I mean, when you finish this, what sort of life-changing thing is going to happen for yourself, for the communities, for education in that region?
Well, that's a tall order. I mean, it wasn't an action research in the sense that I didn't go to implement a project or an initiative
Mm.
alongside the research. The main purpose was really just to understand the environment and find out what's happening. So, I mean, in terms of my contribution, if you will, I certainly don't overplay that. But I think one of the things that it does do is shed light into the various tensions and the complexities within these and similar environments. So just the knowledge around the way that tensions manifest between formal schooling and other forms of schooling and informal apprenticeships. I think that type of knowledge is knowledge that doesn't currently exist within the literature around these schools. And I make the argument that researchers who want to understand or research schooling in these or similar environments, they have
Mm.
to look beyond schooling because schooling is not the only form of learning that these communities are undertaking. So they're doing Islamic schooling, they're doing informal apprenticeships, they're doing so many other things in order to expand opportunities for their children. So if you're going to just limit your perspective to schooling, you really have just a partial perspective in terms of what's really happening within those environments. Um, but I also talk about the need for government to really try to understand what is happening within these communities and find ways to support parents as they try to provide these multiple opportunities for their children. So, in terms of informal apprenticeship, for example, at the junior and the secondary school level in the curriculum, there are vocational courses that students are required to take, but the level of implementation is very weak, which is why parents continue to enroll children in formal apprenticeships outside of the school, despite
Mm.
the fact that there's provision for vocational courses within the school. So that's something that government certainly needs to revisit in terms of finding ways to deepen the implementation of that and possibly, experiment or trial with a handiwork or informal apprenticeship sort of track within junior and secondary schooling such that instead of parents having to enroll children outside of school to acquire those skills, it might be possible for government to experiment with a few schools where alongside sort of the formal curriculum, there could be an informal apprenticeship sort of curriculum that students coming outside of secondary school and graduating from that process will not only have their secondary schooling certification and curriculum and skills, but may also then acquire or would have also acquired skills from informal apprenticeships where they can actually start practicing. Perhaps they can set up a micro enterprise if they want to, and it doesn't prevent them from pursuing tertiary education if they still want to. What it does is just expand the opportunities and the possibilities to be able to self-sustain, in their immediate life.
I mean, it sounds like a good sort of, you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end point, and something that people can, by that time they're what, 18, 17, 18, coming out of school, and a skill that they can use to earn money, basically, because the poverty there is quite high. And I mean, would you say, I don't know if you've been on the project long enough to see them come out the other end, but would you say that there's potential to make this sort of impact?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think there's always potential. I'm certainly an optimist in that sense.
Mm.
It's hard to say, but I use a framework that talks about how sort of persistent the inequality is, and you mentioned poverty. How endemic it can be, and how deep it can be, and so pervasive that presents a challenge for people to come out of or to overcome. But I think it is possible, and I think it begins with the acquisition of real skills that children can actually actualize. And there's an interesting thing that some parents talk about how formal schooling has actually narrow the difference between those who have gone to school and those who haven't gone to school. So they talk about how those who haven't gone to school but have gone on and learned informal apprenticeships, because they've been able to begin their little micro enterprises and started gaining, generating income, they've been
Mm.
able to achieve certain phases in their lives, so such as getting married, perhaps buying land and building a home. Whereas those who've gone to school and who didn't do the informal apprenticeships, they're there still waiting for a job or still depending on their parents, and they haven't been able to transition to those critical life stages. So this parent was making the point that there's supposed to be a difference between having gone to school and not having gone to school. Yet, with the current climate, that difference no longer exists, such that it's actually things are upside down, that those who haven't gone to school are actually
Mm.
doing better off than those who have. So it's really quite interesting.
Wow, that is very mind-boggling actually to get around that idea. I
Mm.
mean, let's just talk about, we've got about 9 minutes left, but let's just talk about your current campaign, because you want to provide um, school bags for school children, and also you've mentioned sandals as well. That's the shoes is a big thing. Do you just want to talk about that for a bit?
Yes, so this is an initiative that I'm running with a friend. So I've talked about my communities and my research with various people. And this friend so came up with an idea of trying to do something as well in order to support the community. So we thought about what we could provide that would address some of these day-to-day needs that again, are spoken of and I also observe within the environment. So the initiative is around really trying to provide necessary school supplies. So many children don't have exercise books, and some of
Mm.
them, when they do have books, what some parents do is because they're unable to afford books, is that they pass on unused they pass on the exercise books from siblings that might have maybe a few pages left. So if they have an eldest child in junior secondary or senior secondary who has used up an exercise book but hasn't finished all the pages, they might pass that on to the child in primary school to use up the remaining pages. And often children don't have pencils or pens, school supplies. And certainly
Wow.
many children don't have sandals. I mean, a lot of them, the school sandals anyways, they either wear so the home slippers or many of them walk barefoot. Many children don't have school bags. They use a sack maybe that they have in their home, that they've used for other things. That's where they put their school items in. So the whole initiative is to just try to provide sort of a set of materials for each child that would contain so a school bag with
Mm.
exercise books, so 6 books per child, a pen, pencil, eraser, sharpener, and if the funds allow, we would also like to provide sandals and socks for each child.
Sounds an amazing initiative. What I've done is I've put the link for those of you who are watching on YouTube. It's on there, and it's also on Facebook as well. So please do donate to this very, very worthy cause. You've got your Just Giving page on there, Bacola, and you were saying that you'll probably distribute these after Ramadan. Um,
Yes, because so these are Muslim communities again. So we would like
mm.
we'll do it. We'll wait. I mean, we'll leave the page for another couple of weeks to see how much we generate, and then we'll do it after Ramadan. Yeah.
So you've got a target of £500, and you've currently raised 145, which is 28%. So inshallah, if people are listening to this, please do get on board. And this is providing school children in in rural Nigeria with the sandals, hopefully, inshallah, a school bag and supplies, including 6 school books, other materials that are, like a pen. Are you really going to give them one pen, Bacola? They might need a backup.
I know. I saw that. Well, we'll see. We will see. We might give them two, but we'll see what we're able to raise and how we can distribute it across the students. Yeah.
Have you got people at the other end who will receive and put all of these together for you?
Yes. So I've got a colleague who's in the state who so we've got someone who's donated some bags already for some students. So with the funds, we'll purchase the other bags. But we do have someone who's helping us to put all these together, and we'll do
Brilliant.
the distribution. Yeah.
And for yourself, what's next for you? I'm always interested in what PhD students do after they've done this massive amount of work.
Well, I mean, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I said I might set up a tent outside the OU and just, I don't know, think about my life. But that's a that's as far as I've gotten with the what next. I'm not sure, to be honest.
Mm.
I think I'm just looking forward to submitting, looking forward to doing the Viva. Opportunities, if I see job opportunities in the interim, certainly I will be applying. And sort of in the interim between the submission and the Viva, maybe work on a couple of papers because that will also enhance my employability. So yeah, I'm open to opportunities and just keeping my the ear on the ground and eyes out for what might arise.
What are you? What's your Viva in? What are you going to do for your Viva?
What do you mean?
Like practically, do you know what you're going to be doing yet?
Well, it's
Or
gonna be online. It's
right?
gonna be online, yeah. So it's probably gonna be through Microsoft Teams or something. I mean, there's not really a format. I might put together some sort of presentation. I've got some videos of the community that obviously haven't made their way into the document itself. So I might put together some sort of a pictorial or a film, just like a couple of minutes of the communities to really give them a sense of where I've been.
I
And
mean,
then see things.
right, sorry. I was going to say international development's a huge thing at the moment. You know, there is a lot of investment going into Africa, mainly because they've got so many resources. I mean, do you worry that some communities are being exploited because of their lack of understanding, or they're, maybe trying to get on board with something that seems like a good idea, but not necessarily down the line?
Well, I start off my thesis by sort of questioning the conventional paradigm in international development, and it's part of why within my methodology I try to give back in the different ways that I've done. So I've got a personal sort of interest and commitment in doing things differently and in engaging with communities differently. But there are recent trends in trying to be more responsive and adaptive to communities and to the conditions in which projects and programs are implemented. So I welcome those trends, but I think there's certainly, you know, more room for improvement, absolutely, in the way that we engage communities in development work.
On the whole, Nigeria, what's the position there at the moment with the pandemic situation? How are they coping?
Well, I mean, given the data that we've seen, it seems that they've been one of the countries that have been able to manage it. But during the Christmas period early the year, I mean, some of the reports that I was hearing weren't that positive, but it seems like things have improved. I think the trick from the reports that I was hearing was because of sort of the weakness of the health system,
Mm,
people don't even know that they have underlying conditions.
right.
So if you catch COVID, you might pass away within a week. Whereas within this environment where people generally are aware that they have diabetes or they have whatever, and because of that awareness, they take, self-isolation much more seriously. But
Mm,
where you don't have a culture of people sort of taking, doing health checks consistently and knowing what their underlying conditions might be, if they catch something, that's it. So so that's sort of been the situation with COVID, but it seems like it's generally from the data again that we have that it's been sort of managed to some extent. But that's probably because of environmental conditions, sort of natural conditions, not necessarily because of management per se, because vaccine access in Africa, it remains an issue.
okay. Thank you. We have to leave it there, Bacola, but thank you so much for coming on to the show. And I've shared your links and we'll carry on distributing that link, trying to get people to donate in the next few days. And by the grace of
Thank
God.
you.
Yeah. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. It's been great.
No
Thank you.
problem. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Radio Ramadan 87.9 FM, keeping you company throughout the holy month.
Families Relief are working on a special Ramadan program that needs